On your language learning journey, you may encounter different kinds of problems. The difficulty of learning and trying to memorize new vocabulary, or simply finding time to study. Sometimes a problem comes out from where you least expect it to appear. You decide to take a break, to clear your head and freshen up a bit. You then come back to your language studies and find yourself a bit lost. Today, let's talk about what we should do to come back to language learning after, say, a month-long break with minimum number of problems and with maximum success. If you look at this situation itself, it may look rather weird. You may have been learning a language for a year, 2, or even more. You then go on holidays for a couple of weeks and you naturally don't even have time to study, which is totally fine. Your brain requires some rest, to which it has every right. You then come back home and realize you have forgotten a couple of things, let alone those grammar topics and words you learned just before your study break. Now they look as if it's the first time in your life that you see them. It's everything at the same time. Annoying, confusing, unclear even why that stuff happens. It actually happened to me last month. Getting home after my holidays in Argentina, where I had a perfect chance to practice my Spanish, I successfully forgot, so to speak, about my French and Hindi. And what is more interesting, I forgot them in different ways. In the case of French, it was more or less okay. I found out I needed to revise some of the last topics and vocabulary I tried to memorize just before leaving. With Hindi, it was different. I even had to come back almost to the very beginning and revise some of the characters, writing symbols, I mean. We may also wonder why such a thing happens. Why do we tend to forget something that we once, as it seemed to us, learned and memorized? I'd love to share with you one particular thing that I found in the book that I'm reading right now, Learned Forever by Gabriel Weiner, in the 2nd chapter, where he talks exactly about the problem of forgetting something that we are trying to memorize and what we should do to avoid it. He mentions a German psychologist, Hermann Ebbinghaus, who was engaged in the experimental psychology of memory and created the so-called forgetting curve. As you can see here, our memory of those words we learned, say 20-30 minutes ago, gets worse and worse every hour if we don't do any relearning. The more time passes by without us getting back to the word or phrase, the less chances we have to ever memorize it at all. If we don't come back to those words we learned a month ago, we may forget almost all of them. Please don't rush to blame your brain and memory. After all, they are just simply a sophisticated filter which makes irrelevant information forgettable and meaningful information memorable. When your brain encounters one word, it lets it in for a couple of hours and then lets it out if you don't use it. Your brain thinks it's completely unnecessary to store that exact word that it saw only once. So if you want your memory and brain think that this exact word is necessary, then you have to come back to that word again and again. And not only reuse that word, but also try to recall it, about which the author also mentions in his book, which I really recommend you to have a look at. So now let me show you what I did myself to come back to my language studies and make this transition from holidays mode smooth. And let me start with French, I think. As I've already mentioned, I didn't find myself a total zero after this month-long break, but I guess even longer breaks won't make me literally forget this beautiful language, because I already have several years of learning French behind me. Nevertheless, it seemed to me I had lost some new vocabulary I had, and felt like I needed to revise some grammar rules. Some of you probably already know I love grammar and find it relaxing in some way sometimes, about which I mentioned in one of my study vlogs. So I picked up this bulky but so useful French grammar book and freshened up my memory on it a little. If you're coming back, like me, to the language that you've been trying to master for quite a while, I imagine you already have a couple of books you've read, or some magazines, or something else of that kind. What you can do is to flip through the pages again, look at some of your notes, reread some paragraphs or chapters. You will either look at those things you once highlighted, thinking that you've improved a lot since then, and you still remember those simple, as they now seem to you, words and phrases. Making your self-esteem and self-confidence is important in language learning too. Or else you will revise once again the vocabulary you learned earlier and that then fell out of your usage. So it's like a win-win in any case. That was exactly what I did with this book I've got, which is full of little stories in French with some explanations and translation of some phrases into Russian. And this way I went slowly, one page after another, and even read a few stories I hadn't looked at yet. Another day I felt much more comfortable with my French and really wanted to continue working with my France project, in which I'm writing about every region of France and its traditions. I'll make a separate video about my language journals and projects real soon, so don't forget to subscribe and press the bell button not to miss it. After that, I decided to write a text, some kind of a story about my journey to Argentina in order to do some writing activity, which I really recommend you to. If there are words you don't know, you just write them in your native language or any other language you speak, and you then search for the translation and add it to your vocabulary list, highlighting them with a special color. In a nutshell, just take it easy, do some language activities you personally like. Reading, listening, music helps a lot, and films too. Grammar if you enjoy it. Your main task is to restore all the knowledge you already have. It's just your brain needs a little while to remember about it. Now let's see what we can do when it feels like we forgot everything. Of course, you simply cannot forget literally everything you've been trying to learn, especially if it's been going well. In my case, I've been learning Hindi for about a year now, at a slow pace, to be honest. I'm not actually pursuing any particular goals with this language. It's just that I'm fairly interested in the culture and the language itself. So if you take a break in a language that you're a beginner yet, you will more likely notice some slight difficulties on coming back to it. But trust me, you will feel it only in the very beginning. Your brain will help you recall and remember everything if you don't pressure yourself too much. The first thing that is important in my view is just to take your language notebook and revise everything from the beginning. You may find that some things actually have always been inside your brain. You only needed to look at it and recall. There will also be things that you will want to write out, maybe some specific words that look less familiar to you now. That's what I did. I took some stickers and wrote down all the words that I felt like I needed to recall. well, and maybe to relearn. I then stuck them to the shelf right in front of me, so I can see and look at it every time I sit at my desk. To be honest, it really helps me. You should give it a go too, because every time, whether you like it or not, you are going to have a glance at this sticker. That's why the chances of you revising what you have written on it are pretty high. Another thing you have to keep in mind is, again, I'm going to repeat myself. Take it easy. Give yourself a couple of days to revise everything you need, and please don't make yourself forget that it's totally fine to forget things. Sorry for tautology, but it's really true. Don't expect your brain to store hundreds of foreign words without having a chance to let some of them out from time to time. During these days, you can, like I did, come back to the exercises I have done before. There was something I had left without completing, so I did that. I went slowly through almost every unit until I was sure again I was able to continue my Hindi learning process and start new topics. All the advice you've just heard are really helpful. Test it on myself. But there might be some of you who take language learning seriously for various reasons. Maybe you're learning a language for a specific purpose and you don't even have, time to take it easy. So you'd prefer to study even on your holidays. Here my recommendations will be probably first to take a little notebook with you inside which you will be able to write simple texts every day or two. About what you'll be writing is already a question to you. It can either be something simple, describing your holidays and what you do every day, or else it can be something complex, related to the topics you personally are interested in now. Another helpful thing will be to have a language learning app on your phone that you can play with at any moment you are free. And well, the last but not least, that will be a good idea for someone to take a book with you on holidays that you can enjoy. The important thing is to make sure that it has an appropriate language level for you, so that you won't have to look up many unknown words to you and translate them. To sum it up, let's remember that first of all, it's okay to take a break sometimes. And secondly, it's normal, it's fine to forget some vocabulary that we once learned, or even the whole grammar rules. The good news is that we are perfectly able to recall and remember all of that again, if we give some time to ourselves. And in the case of each of us, the amount of time needed to remember all that will be different. Before we say goodbye, there was another thing I wanted to add. Nowadays, everybody seems to be addicted to all kinds of plans. Day planning, reading planning, language learning planning. Don't get me wrong, planning is a good thing when you approach it consciously and wisely. But I personally don't really believe in language learning planning. Learning a language is, on one hand, a complex process. Yes, it does require a lot of time. Yes, it does require from you stable and balanced work. But on the other hand, it is a process to enjoy and diving into a new culture, history, traditions, etc. What am I getting at? I'm simply trying to show you that you don't need to approach this process as coming back to language learning as something strict, as something that needs a strict plan, and that there's a certain way of doing it. If you don't feel like you need any plan for it, go and do those language learning activities that you love. There are so many bloggers now with different kinds of guides and plans of how to study languages and so on. I have nothing against, but the only thing I'm asking you is to listen to your brain first, because it knows better how you personally should approach language learning. Well, relearning in our case. People often show how it works out for them, which may not work out for you. So don't try to copy. Try to find your own ways of how to come back to learning your target language. So I hope you found this video worth your time. If it's so, please leave a good comment down below. I'll really appreciate your like to this video. See you in the next one.